I'm gonna end the poll. So, so our poll question number one is, what's your main reason for considering lawn alternatives? Most of us want to enjoy like the benefits of saving water, reduce maintenance, and the lower costs. Also, the environmental benefits it brings by having lawn alternatives. And then second question is, what type of lawn alternative are you most interested in? So like most 88 more than 80% of us want to know more about native plants. So you you'll find more about native plants in tonight's webinar. And third question is, what's your biggest concern about replacing a lawn? And some people like don't know where to start, so that's a good thing you sign up for tonight's webinar. That is the first where you can start. Um, you can learn where you can start, and then other people think the appearance um, of replacing a lawn. And And the fourth question is just me interested in what topics you guys are interested in, so I can choose the topic, the weapons topic in the future to like maybe more water-wise gardening topics, more tailored native plants topics. So that's good to know. Thank you everyone for filling out the poll questions. So I'm going to start and share my screen. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Claire Wong from the city of Sunnyvale, and I'll be moderating tonight's program along with our co-sponsor, Bosca, and our instructor, Juanita Salisbury. I want to welcome all of you to our class. Before we begin the program, I'm going to provide some guidelines for a successful participation in the webinar. First, all attendees are muted by default to reduce the background noise to the presentation. For tonight's class, we ask that you save any questions that you might have for the end of each section. If you would like to ask a question, you can do so in two ways. First option is to use the raise hand feature. I will then call upon you and unmute you to ask your question. Second option is to type your question in the Q&A. I will then read questions to the instructor or respond directly in the chat. This illustration shows where you can find the raise hand button and the Q&A button. Now that we have that out of the way, I would like to share a little background on Bosca's landscape educational program. Bosca is a special district that represents the interests of 26 cities, water districts, and private water companies, all of which purchase wholesale water from the San Francisco Regional Water Supply. Bosco member agencies collectively serve over 1.8 million residents and 40,000 businesses in San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Alameda counties. Bosco's goal is to ensure a reliable supply of high quality water at a fair price for agencies and their customers. Consistent with that goal, Bosca provides a regional water conservation program to support our agencies in improving water use efficiency. The landscape education program is one element of that conservation program. While we have made significant strides in water use efficiency in the past decade, there is still more room for improvement. Outdoor water use represents the single largest untapped opportunity for water conservation in the Basca surface area. Outdoor water use reduction through the use of water efficient plants and innovative techniques can help conserve water and ensure that future water supply needs of our communities are met. A few highlights on additional conservation programs that may be of interest to you. Fairly Water has several rain barrel rebate options. You can get up to $35 for installing a rain barrel, 50 cents a gallon for installing a cistern and $1 per square foot of a rain garden. Bosca has a newly redesigned landscape rebate program which provides rebates to customers of participating water agencies for replacing water intensive lawn space with water efficient landscaping. Bosca also has the I Heart Great Water program, which gives residents up to $200 in rebates for connecting a washing machine to a gray water irrigation system. Next, there's the Bosca Lawn Be Gone rebate, which gives residents various rebates for transforming their lawns and making them more water efficient. Another program by Bosca is the Smart Controller program, which provides instant rebates and heavily discounted pricing on purchase of the Retro 3 irrigation controller. This controller can be operated on your smartphone and normally retails for $280. Through this program, customers of participating water agencies can purchase a controller for $100 plus tax. For more information or to find out which of these programs are available in your area, visit bayareaconservation.org. The City of Sunnyvale encourages you to participate in rebate programs offered by Valley Water. Valley Water offers $2 per square foot of rebates for replacing your lawns and plants that require a lot of water with drought-tolerant plants or permeable hardscape. We also offer up to $200 in rebates for properties that connect a closed washer to a great irrigation system. In order to qualify for these rebates, please make sure you apply first. A common mistake is that residents get excited about the rebates and start transforming their lawn before making sure that they qualify. Also, are you looking for compost? Free compost and mulch are available for Sunnyvale residents at the Smart Station. Stop by Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we just added a new location for compost pickup for Sunnyvale, Mountain View, and Cupertino residents. It's at the Charles Street Garden, 433 Charles Street. And there will be signs in the parking lot to the pile. You can pick up this certified organic compost 7 days a week. Just bring your own shovel and container. Additional information on water-wise gardening can be found on southbaygreen.gardens.org, where they also have some landscape designs and templates as well. It's a great way to get some ideas before you go ahead and apply for those rebates. Here is a snapshot of the water-wise gardening website. It provides resources to support residents in water-efficient landscape renovations and management. Resources include a gallery of gardens with plants identified, plant selection tool, and even a watering calculator. If you enjoyed tonight's program, we invite you to check out our upcoming webinar classes. You can view the full schedule and register at bayareaconservation.org. If you are interested in staying up to date with Sunnyvale's environmental department, make sure to subscribe or follow us on social media. Feel free to scan the QR codes or search using the green text provided. We share tips and tricks for living sustainably in Sunnyvale, as well as rebate information and upcoming events. If you have questions about the rebate programs, please contact Valley Water for more information. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our instructor, Juanita Salisbury. After growing up in the rural Willamette Valley in Oregon, Juanita studied psychology in college, eventually receiving a PhD in biopsychology from the University of Florida. Later, she obtained a Bachelor of Science in Landscape Architecture from West Virginia University. In 2009, she established Juanita Salisbury Landscape Architecture after working for commercial and residential design firms. In 2016, she established the Primrose Way Pollinator Garden, the first of the 8 California native plant habitats in Palo Alto. Her focus is to research and educate about these habitats as well as exploring opportunities to install more of them. In 2020, she joined the Friends of Palo Alto Parks Board as a director and recently became the secretary and continues her efforts to enhance and preserve local parks and natural areas. Juanita, thank you so much for joining tonight. I'm going to stop sharing and please take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Claire. Let's see here. Okay, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Um, as Claire said, my name is Juanita Salisbury. I'm a landscape architect here in California, and you can follow what we do here in Palo Alto on our social media, both on Facebook and Instagram, the Primrose Way Pollinator Garden. I also have a YouTube channel, Primrose Way, and then we also have a website in case you prefer not to look at social media, and that's primrosewaypollinatorgarden.com. So here in Palo Alto, we have a lot of different gardens. If you come in along Embarcadero Road here, the first of the gardens, the Primrose Way Garden, further down the street along the Embarcadero Road Pollinator Corridor. There's the Gwynda Street Garden, Hopkins Avenue Pollinator Garden, Arcadia, Island Drive, Churchill, and West Greenwich. And they're open all the time. So you can go and take a look at the plants there, see what you like. And if you have any questions, feel free to follow up on our website. I do have a contact form. And so if you have any questions or if you'd like to volunteer, that's an option as well. So tonight I'm going to talk about things in broad categories. I want to make it as easy as possible for people to convert their lawns into something way better. And so I'm going to talk about how form follows function, how we get rid of our lawn, and then decisions, how do we decide what to plant? And spelling would be a good way. I just noticed I spelled that wrong. Lawn alternatives, trees and other native plants, and then maintenance. So that's the general overview. So first question, ask yourself, do you need a lawn? So how will you use your area? Remember, form follows functions. What is the function of the area that you want? Do you need to walk, sit, play? Um, Lots of different questions that only you can answer. So those are questions that you need to ask yourself. How do you want to use your area? Easy way to get rid of your lawn is sheet mulching. And here I have a screenshot from Lawn to Garden that basically, this is a screenshot of their website, and it shows you how to sheet mulch and other resources. So you can cover up that green rug and turn it into something else. And again, lots of resources for learning how to do this. When you sheet mulch, don't remove your lawn. Like I said, you want it to be easy. Just throw down the cardboard and smother the grass that way, compost and mulch on top of it to hold it down, and you can plant right away. What that might look like after doing that, it's really fast, is that you have um, one lawn alternative is mulch. And this is a garden that I did for a neighbor just down the street. She has a little rain garden as well in there. But basically, when you sheet mulch and throw down mulch, you get an instant clean slate and you can plant right in. You just basically cut a hole in the cardboard and you plant right away. And you can walk on this. So instant clean slate there. So, but how do you decide? So decisions. And so I like to have a strategy because every garden is different. You need a system to guide your decisions. So specific plants, I will give you some specific plants. They may or may not work in your garden. But if you have a system to base your decisions on, that helps you come to a conclusion about what you should plant. Yeah, so we untangle it for you. Um, and that basically is to use keystone and pioneer plant species. And what are these? So keystone species are the backbones of mature ecosystems. They basically are the keystone holding everything up. If you think about a stone arch that has stone going in an arch, the middle top one is the thing that holds it together. That's the keystone. If you pull that out, the whole thing collapses. Pioneer species are the ones that trailblaze and colonize disturbed areas. And together, these pioneer species um, prepare the way, and then the keystone species ensure that long-term stability and biodiversity. And when you incorporate those both into your garden, then you have a more resilient and sustainable ecosystem. So consider the function of plants before we get into what we plant and where they go. Um, to really do it correctly, it's important to understand what all the parts do. So the function of plants are the primary producers of food and the basis of food webs. So this is a key fact to know. This is part of that strategy. So we have energy from the sun getting transformed by plants, eaten by caterpillars, and then fed to baby birds. This is actually in my own home garden. This was the uh, clutch of nuthatches that we had last year, and it was a thrill, and they're back this year. But basically, basis of food webs. So food for insects, and then those insects become food for other organisms. And as a rule, native insects only eat the native plants they evolved with. They're very picky eaters. So among other characteristics, plants that feed multiple species are more likely to be keystone species. So what are some of those native keystone and pioneer plant species local to our county? And this is a wonderful question. So we can look at our ecoregion here of all of California, where this is from the National Wildlife Federation screenshotting their keystone plants. And they break it down into trees, shrubs, herbaceous perennials, and then they talk about caterpillars and moths that eat the plants. So this is a really fun website to take a look at to find keystone plant species. You can also go to my go-to place, CalScape, which is a database of the over 8,000 species of native plants that we have in California. So lots to choose from, but you can search by location. And here I've taken a screenshot of Santa Clara County, in which we have 840 different things to choose from. And they break it down by where you can get it in the nursery, the plant type, sun, water, and so forth. So that really helps you, um, you know, like hone in and target those plants that grow here locally. The ones that grow here locally naturally are adapted to living on rainfall alone. So for the most part, so that's a huge water savings if you don't have to do any additional watering. Um, and because those plants are going to feed insects that are going to then transfer that energy from the sun into the food web, um, for butterfly species here in Santa Clara County, we have over 1,000 different species of butterflies and moths. And fun fact, 19 times more species of moths than butterflies in general. So lots of larvae to feed baby birds. So why do I talk about insects if we want to talk about plants? It's because of water storage. Plants and animals store water in their living tissues, and then they move it around the environment using different processes. Plants do evapotranspiration. They release water into the atmosphere and cool down the water. Animals store water in their tissues to live. And so when you have plants storing water, that water is transferred to those insects that feed on them. How can you find out how much water plants use? You can use the Water Use Classification of Landscape Species. This is an online searchable database for plant factors of individual species. And what that just basically means is if you use a lawn as 100% of water use, everything is ranked against that. So something with a very low water use is 0 to 0.1 or 0 to 10% of what a lawn would use. So you can look at plants in terms of how much they use compared to a lawn. So that's a good way to filter out some of those high water use plants. So if you have to walk on things and you want lawn alternatives, we have lots of native grasses here in California. And they look great. Some of them are actually used as commercial turf. You can actually purchase the turf. So the bunch grasses, that means they grow in clumps, so you end up with this kind of like soft textured area. You can still walk on these. Grasses are pretty tough. You can put them into, um, these little strips and stuff like that. Um, and originally I did have a non-native, I know, don't come for me on this, but I had a non-native thyme in between stepping stones. That did not live for me. That was an experiment. And I've since replaced it with a variety of small growing, very short growing perennials, and it looks great between those stepping stones. So as I mentioned, you can get native sod blends, and these use very little water. Um, it's like maybe 10 to 20% of what a regular non-native turf grass uh, lawn would use. And so this is a company that I specify a lot as a landscape architect, Delta Bluegrass. They have different blends, so you can get different looks depending on how you like it. You don't have to mow it. That's part of the low maintenance part. You can let it just look like a meadow. Or if if you have a smaller area that you can easily mow, then you can mow it. So it's, getting rid of that weekly mowing is a huge cost savings in terms of maintenance, in terms of what you have to, if you pay somebody to do it, you have to buy gasoline to like, unless you have an electric mower. I mean, it's like more work to do a regular lawn. But with these, you don't have to do any of those. Now, if you don't want to mow and you don't need to walk on things, you can do ground covers. Lots of different California native plants are low growing and evergreen, meaning they retain their leaves throughout the entire year. They don't drop them all at once. And one, I'm going to give you a specific example here, is Ceanothus thrissiflorus, Yankee Point. You know, looks great. It gives a lot of food for different butterflies. The larvae eat them. It flowers, and the flowers, if you pick them, you can actually use water and soap up with them. They suds up because they have saponin in the blossoms, so that's kind of cool. Um, Super low water use. Basically, Ceanothus does not like to be watered during the summer at all, so it can basically survive on rainfall alone after it's been established. Another one that I like is Achillea millifolia. This is semi-evergreen, so it can look a little bit ratty sometime during different parts of the year. Spreads by runners. You can mow it. You can walk on it. You can trim it. It blooms. I basically use this as a filler plant between other plants, sort of like a matrix in which everything lives. And it's a great larval food source for various moths and butterflies, as well as providing nectar and pollen, and relatively low water use as well. One of my absolute favorites to use as a lawn alternative, a ground cover, is our wild strawberries. So we have Fragaria vesca, which spreads by runners, has a tasty little fruit, and uh, this one is actually a slightly different one than Fragaria vesca. It's Fragaria virginiana, has a very tasty little fruit there. But strawberries as a ground cover. They're evergreen. They just are a super fun plant to have. Another ground cover that we use, this is out at the Primrose Garden. This is Salvia Bee's Bliss. It's actually a hybrid. I'm trying to get away from hybrids because they can be really vigorous. And this one is super vigorous. It can get a bit to be about 12 to 24 inches tall and spreads about 8 feet across in 2 years. So it's super vigorous. Um, and there are other sages that are low growing like this that we have in California that are not hybrids. If you don't want something that's kind of a thug like this one, we have to trim back the edges to keep it from topping over all the other plants. But if you want a huge green swath, this is a plant that will do that for you. Now let's talk about trees and shrubs. So um, what you can do if you have a meadow of different small plants that you can walk through and walk on, and you have stepping stones through them, so you can still walk through the area and you don't need to like step on the plants, is introduce some shade. Shade is really important for plants. Not everything likes to cook in the sun. And so keystone species to really get that sort of like make the whole mix of plants more coherent is to introduce a keystone like the Vallia Quercus lobata. This is over at the Hopkins Garden. Um, Here in the Santa Clara Valley County, it used to be 61% of the tree cover here. Now I think it's only about 1%. It's like such an amazing plant. It stores carbon underground. It pulls carbon dioxide out of the air. It's deciduous, so it drops its leaves all at once. And if you just leave them, you don't have to blow them away. You can just leave them because that's actually good for the tree. It makes the tree grow faster. Um, it's taproot. It has a taproot that goes down to the water, deep in the ground, and then lateral surface roots that spread it out and share it with the other plants. So plants are moving water around in a lot of different ways, and they share it. And when you have a lot of different kinds of plants together, you get a community of plants. Plants are social creatures. They like each other. These plants that grew up through the millennia of evolution, they all know how the other plants interact, and so they share resources. And you want to plant native plants underneath your large trees like that. So super fast growing. People say, but aren't oaks slow? They can grow really fast, 3 to 4 feet a year even. So and they last a long time, 600 years or more. But if you don't have room for a big old oak, what else can you fit in your yard? If you have some existing trees or not very much space, and this is a few of the trees I have in our yard, and our lot is about 6,000 square feet, which about 2/3 of that is taken up by the house, and then we have a big patio. So that leaves tiny little 3 and 4 foot wide strips, a little strip of yard in the back. But I have everything from the big leaf maple to the mountain mahogany, which is a great narrow tree if you have a very narrow space. Um, I even have a willow. And you're like, but Juanita, that's a high water use tree. But it might be, but willows grew here in my area of town historically. So they're very good at finding groundwater. And I occasionally water it, but when I remember, and most of these do fine without any irrigation at all once they've been established. So lots of different kinds of trees that you can put in. The hazelnut, if you have a male and female, you can get nuts from these, so you can get your own filberts. Just lots of different choices, but shade is super important to keep the ground cool and to really kind of reduce that heat island effect as well. So so yeah, that's also part of when you replace your lawn. That's something that you want to introduce. Um, Now for trailblazer species, this is over at the Primrose Garden in the Hell Strip between the street Embarcadero Road. You can see off to the right there, and then there's a sidewalk. That's a strip about 9 feet wide, and the poppy seeds and the blue Gilead capitata, we don't water that at all. That has no irrigation. And those come back every year for us and put on a big show this time of year. So the trailblazers, what they do is they stabilize the soil, they enrich the soil if you have things like legumes like your lupins and things like that so that they'll make the soil better. They attract pollinators and beneficial insects. So if you have a vegetable garden and you want some predators to take out some of your caterpillars that are eating um, your cabbages, you know, if you plant native plants around them, they will attract those predators. They will also attract birds that will also eat the caterpillars. Provides that early stage food and habitat for wildlife, creates that great microclimate um, for other plants to establish. So the benefits here, one, seeds are cheap. You know, you can just throw a packet of seeds out, cover them up with a little bit of mulch, and they will sprout. So you can do it cheaply, jumpstart that ecosystem, improve your soil health, reduce weed pressure, attract wildlife and increase biodiversity, and facilitate the establishment of your other plants. So a great example of that are California state flower, poppies. Uh, Drought tolerance, they are adapted to living here without any additional irrigation. They're rapidly colonizing areas, so they get in there and establish quickly. They're very prolific seed producers, so I always tell people start with one plant and then collect the seeds, and you will end up with a couple of hundred plants the year after. And then by colonizing those disturbed areas, they help to stabilize the soil. So, you know, you can see their functions here. And when you put the functions of these pioneer species together in with your keystone species, it just makes it easier to establish your plants and also reduces the water costs that you need to establish them. Some more pioneer plant examples. Lupins are great. They fix nitrogen, meaning they pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere, and then through an interaction with some bacteria, they put it into the soil. Coyote brush, lots of different forms of coyote brush. This one is Baccharis pilearis Twin Peaks, stays nice and flat. This shrub we planted along the corridor in places where it gets absolutely no irrigation. And after we first plant them, we water them in, and they don't get anything after that. So if you want to reduce your watering 100%, um, you know, coyote brush is the way to go. You can get taller forms of this, you can get shrubby forms, but this is a super, super durable shrub. And then buckwheats, another pioneer species, a great plant. I love this plant so much. It's a coastal one that you see growing on coastal bluffs. And it's great for pollinators, and it looks good most of the year. And little blue butterflies lay their eggs on it, so it's super cool. So my recommended species that I start with your shrubs, the Arctostaphylos, Ceanothus, Eriogonum, and Baccharis, basically your manzanitas, your blue blossom, that's what people call them. Eriogonums are called buckwheats. Baccharis or coyote brush. Those are the scientific names. Easier to get exactly what you're looking for if you use those names. And then the trees, your oaks, your maples, and your cherries. Those are all keystone species. And they're all super easy to grow. Once you establish an oak, you don't have to water it. Um, you know, the prunus, the cherry species, I have a couple of different kinds in my yard. I do not water them at all. So they exist on rain. Um, and they have those amplified effects, meaning they affect a lot of other kinds of plants. You can start with one of these and simply build from there. Um, so so like, how do you do it? So you want to make a plan, especially if you're going to do any sort of rebate, you have to show a plan. And so you can say, okay, I'm going to use this graph paper and I'll use 1 square equals 1 foot. And then, you know, consider pathways. If you don't plan on like trampling the plants or using it for like, you know, a big picnic or gatherings, you know, think about how you're using the space. You know, put your pathways through, save places for um, you know, whatever activities that you might want to do. And then choose your plants. You know, if you want ground covers, if you want shrubs, what trees do you have? And then start placing them on the grid that you've marked out the location of your like your fences and your the house and everything, the doors and windows. You want to start with your large stuff first and basically draw a circle that represents the plant at its mature diameter, and then place those, place your shrubs next, and then place your ground covers. That's a great way to start. And then you can get the spacing correct with the circles just touching or overlapping. And you can get the number of plants that you need. So this is really helpful. And then you can, if you're looking for a rebate, then you have a plan. And they're super easy to do. Just get some graph paper out there, measure a few things, and draw those circles in at the mature diameter. So in terms of taking care of everything, um, with 8 public gardens, I'm always looking for like, is there some way I can justify doing less work? And as it turns out, native gardens are less maintenance than a non-native garden with a lawn because you don't mow, you don't have to do any aeration of the soil, you don't have to fertilize it at all, and you're not irrigating it like you would a lawn where the sprinklers come on for 20 minutes and water goes all over the sidewalk. That doesn't have to happen. So basically what you have with a native garden is weeding, keeping those weeds at bay. So get them before they drop their seeds, irrigating the plants to establish them about once a week or so. Um, you know, in some of our like hill strip areas along the corridor project, we don't water the plants once we plant during the rainy season, which is now. Um, and then it's up to the plants to survive or not. Sometimes we inoculate the plants with a fungal mycorrhizal uh, inoculant that will help the plants to establish their roots in the ground. That's one of the little tricks that I have. So getting a mycorrhizal inoculant. Um, but if you do water, water just outside of the root ball because roots are really good at finding water. They will grow towards a water source. You've probably all seen sewer pipes that are full of roots. Roots know where the water is. That is their superpower. You want to prune sparingly and basically control the dried up dead stuff for fire safety. So, and however that works at your property. You don't, as I mentioned, you don't need to fertilize. We initially mulch to control weeds and to help establish, but if we have leaves that drop down into the area, we just leave those. People say, well, it's going to smother my plants. Not really. I mean, you can brush them off, if you want, but those leaves will decompose and they'll drop down through the plant and, enrich the soil. That's what leaves do. That's their function. That's their job. Um, we do leave some areas of bare dirt because once you have established all these great plants, you're going to end up with pollinators like this cute little bee here that's on Gilia tricolor, collecting blue pollen on her back legs there. 70% of our native bees nest underground, so we want them to be able to have a place where they can lay their eggs. So don't use leaf blowers in the planted areas. You can use them on pathways, but really once the leaves drop, you can just leave them where they are. If you don't like the way that looks, you can do like a skim coat of bark mulch on top to get that uniform look. I always like to think of the leaf layer as kind of like the pasta layer in a lasagna, and then the bark chips on top are kind of like the meat layer. And then next year you end up with more leaves, more bark, and you end up with a nice thick layer of habitat for all kinds of critters. And then don't use pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides. Anything that's going to kill stuff, you don't need those things. So super easy, really, in terms of maintenance. Just let the garden show you what it wants to do. Don't feel like you have to control it. It's just the other way around. Um, so plants aren't decoration, plants are food. And so this is the specialty maintenance area. And because plants are food, that means your native garden will attract many native pollinators, other insects, birds, and other organisms because it's food. Everything likes food. And so those keystone plants that you have there, they're providing food for many more species than other plants. And so whenever I go to the nursery, I'm looking for plants that look like this because sometimes I'll bring home little hitchhikers, and those hitchhikers turn into butterflies. So it's a twofer. So always, if your native plants look like they're chewed up, those are the ones that you want to buy. All right. So what are the implications of native plants as food? Because those native plants are going to attract those variety pollinators and other insects, using those best practices will help them complete their life cycles. One of the things that I really thought deeply about before starting any of these gardens was, am I doing the right thing? Is there a downside to this? Is there something that I could do that makes it worse? And so what makes it worse is if things come to your garden and then you kill them. And we don't want that. So we want them to complete their life cycles. So I'm always looking for ways to enhance the, the cyclical nature of the creatures' lives. So what does that mean? Nesting and shelter. Many insects spend a lot more time as an egg or a larva, months or years. Um, they're their larvae much longer than they are adults. The adult phase is basically for one thing, mating and then dying. And so you'll find the larvae in leaf litter. This is why you leave the leaves, because those larvae, after they're done chomping away, they drop into the leaf litter. And so blowing the leaves out is going to, it's like they're not going to be able to complete their life cycles. So just leave the leaves. Um, again, lifespan of some of these creatures a lot longer as larvae than as adults. So native plant gardens are dynamic. The relationships between the plants themselves, the organisms that use the plants, their caretakers, and the overall structure of a garden change over time. One of the things I discovered is that the garden that I originally planted is not the garden that I ended up with. And sometimes that's because things didn't like it there and they died, or the plants moved around where they wanted to be because, like I said, plants are really good at finding water. Some plants that spread by runners, if you plant them in one area, if there's a wet area over here, they will absolutely go to the new area. So that's, so it's a dynamic thing. That's why I always say, let the garden show you rather than you showing it. Once you get the keystone and pioneers in there, that kind of sets the machine in motion and you can start adding little bits and pieces to it over time. But let the garden tell you what it wants. And so among the other thing is that the beauty of all of this, once you have your plants in place, the starter kit, um, you'll see these things happening in your garden. You're providing those opportunities and resources for organisms to complete their life cycle. And so you want to allow time for those biological processes to take place. And here in this video is the mating dance of two Ackman blue butterflies. And they're dancing around the Eriogonum latifolium, the buckwheat that they lay their eggs on. This is over at the Hopkins Garden. And I mean, you know, this is what I mean by the beauty unfolds, because they would not have been there if the plants were not there. So, it's like a Christmas present every single day that something new happens. And though, so, you know, don't don't be don't be intimidated where you can start. So these small actions can create this ecological coherence. So it's like, what I mean by that is that everything works together, um, and it functions as it was intended. Okay, there's nothing that is like clogging up the system. Like, if you think about, like, maybe you have exterior lights at night that are on all night, and you have moths that are attracted to that, and then they get eaten by predators. So you might want to change your exterior lights to a yellow bulb rather than a white bulb, um, because yellow is less attractive, or we put lights on motion sensors. So, um, so that's what I mean. So things like that kind of get in the way of that life cycle from happening. So start with a small area, a corner, a strip, a forgotten edge. You don't even have to do your entire lawn. You can, like, maybe take a little piece of it at a time and choose 3 to 5 native plants that thrive in your exact sun and soil. Plant for the year-round nectar. Think about winter, spring, summer, and fall. add leaf litter or mulch, watch for the pollinators, watch for the creatures that use your garden. That will tell you that your garden is working, that you have coherence. So, um, and then expand when you're ready, and then grow that coherence outward so that everything is functioning as it should. It's a very satisfying thing to see creatures come to the plants that you place there just for them, and of course for you to enjoy. So, my final thoughts here. Ecological coherence means everything in the garden is working together. And you can do that with relatively little water and sometimes just rainfall alone once things are established. The plants, the soil, the insects, the water, the system becomes resilient, meaning it can handle challenges, it can handle droughts, it can handle those 105-degree days. It's more beautiful and more alive over time. And that ecological coherence is a power then that then creates even more power. And so with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Juanita, for the presentation. It's really good. And I like native plants, and it's really nice. Like, I mean, it has been here before we are all born, so they are all adapted to the local condition and they can
Mhm.
thrive. And I like the idea that let the garden show you what what it is instead of we taking the control over it, because that's how nature works. They always they always bring us what we need and
Yes,
provide for the life, like the
yes,
wildlife on
yes,
any
that
creature.
is, yes. And when you let the garden show you things, then it teaches you things. You
Yeah.
know, it's like wait for the lessons and they will come. Trust me. There are so many lessons, and be very patient because nature has a lot of knowledge to share, billions of years worth of nature. And you know, when you wait for the garden to show you what it needs or what it wants or what its lessons are, then it helps you become, a better gardener. And so you're in a relationship with a living organism. A lot of people think of plants as decorations, but they're living organisms. And so we as living organisms, then we have relationships with other organisms. And so you have a relationship with your garden. I know that sounds a little strange, but plants have relationships with each other. We know that they are social creatures. Humans are social creatures. We can have interspecies relationships. You have pets, you can
Hmm.
have plants, why not?
Yeah. And we're all living this together. Like we're all in the same like same web, like a foot, yeah, foot web.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
we do have a couple questions. I'm gonna read it out. So first question, are Japanese maple cherry blossom trees qualified plant for the rebate? Oh, that's a more of a question for me. Um, so the rebate is mostly it's for drought tolerant, so it depends if I'm not too sure if they're drought tolerant, but they Valley Water has a list of like I have a plan list of what is qualified, so I can share that with you all after the webinar. I can send a follow-up email once we get the recording, and I'll also attach that plan list so you can take a look if the Japanese maple and cherry blossom tree are on that list. If it doesn't, then they are not qualified for the rebate. And second question, are the sheet mulches typically purchased commercially or is DIY equally easy?
Ah, so for sheet mulching, basically I just use cardboard boxes. Any sort of deliveries that I've had to my house, we have our cat litter delivered, so um, we go through a lot. And those come in boxes, and the boxes, we end up with a lot of cardboard boxes, and so those are if you save up your cardboard boxes, or if your neighbors have extra cardboard boxes, super easy just to, flatten the boxes down and use that. That's a super easy do-it-yourself thing. Sheet mulching is absolutely a do-it-yourself kind of thing. Just, use what you have on hand. If your neighbors, you can like ask your neighbors if they have any boxes that you want to like take off their hands. So that's a super easy way to do it. Cardboard boxes are like the gold standard for sheet mulching because you can layer them down on the ground, put it right on top of the grass, and then wet it down so that it's nice and heavy and kind of like starting to break up a little bit. And then you can throw some compost on top or some mulch on the top, and you can get the compost and mulch for free um, in various places. So, um, basically, it's like unless it's just your time to do the work.
Right. And then another question, it's about succulents. Um, can we consider, um, should we consider succulents in our garden? Or is there,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Succulents are great plants. Those are the ultimate water storage plants. They are absolutely wonderful. And we have so many different succulents here in California. Um, some of them will kind of like shrivel up. Um, and then with the rains, they kind of puff up again and look really cool. Other succulents stay kind of puffy the entire year. Um, but yeah, so if you go to Calscape and look up succulents, you can see all the different kinds that we have. Um, yeah, no, succulents are wonderful. And I actually have done talks specifically talking about succulents. And funny question that somebody brought this up because I was just out today in between the stepping stones that I showed you where I had the at the time where I've taken it out and I put in a dwarf blue-eyed grass, so it only extends up a couple of inches, and then I have the yarrow growing in between there. I actually do have some native succulents, and I was thinking because these grow pretty flat. They're a sedum, sedum, and those stay nice and flat. And I was thinking I should tuck some of those in too, in between the stepping stones, because they're small. It's a small space, and so it's like you can always find room for another plant somewhere. But absolutely, yeah, succulents are great. There's so many that are super ornamental and they're extremely easy to grow from seed. Um, I've had I've had such wonderful luck growing them from seeds. And the secret there to growing succulents from seed, the secret that they lock in is that they're genetically diverse rather than doing cuttings or offsets or whatever, um, is to put them out and let the rain on them. Rainwater and the rain temperatures seem to be the key thing to making succulent seeds germinate. Don't know why, but that's what happens. So yeah, so that is my phone just now. Um, that's what happens. When you let the garden show you things. Um, I've tried a lot of different kinds of seeds of different plants, and some of the seeds, it's just like they don't germinate and they don't germinate. And I had some seeds that they never sprouted, no matter what I did. And I didn't throw them in the compost heap. I just set them into like a storage area in the back of the garden. And a year later, they sprouted, and I was so astonished. So they just were like waiting for the right moment. And so I'm convinced that it was the rainwater that did it. Um, rain, there's something magical about rain, especially here in California.
thank you. Yeah, sometimes when you're trying like put too much hope onto the plants, they sometimes like, oh, I'm not feeling like growing now. But when you forget about them and they somehow just come out themselves.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is where can you get free mulch? So for Sunnyvale, if you're a Sunnyvale resident, you can go to the Smart Station and you can go to They're Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and bring your own shovel and container to get it. And also we have free compost in the smart station as well. So if you're looking to get free mulch in Sunnyvale, that's where you can go. And I think for out of city, check with your own city environmental services. They might offer some free mulch to their resident. And I also think there's a website. I don't remember the exact like the name, but they if you go on, I'm gonna double check, but if you go on there and then sign up for free mulch, they can drop off free mulch to your address if they happen to have like tree cutting project in the area. But I'll find out that website and send it to the follow-up, put it in the follow-up email. Okay, next question. How aware and intelligent should we be to consider planting seasons for trees?
Ah, so what I like to do is plant during the rainy season for trees. It's just easier to dig a hole when the ground is moist and wet. If it's dry and hard, that's a lot of work. Um, so the rainy season, I think we have a little bit more rain coming, but we're getting towards the end of what we call planting season. Um, and I try not to plant anything during the summertime because it's just hot, and it's just harder for the plants to establish. But I try to get a jump start on planting season by starting planting in September, actually, even while it's still hot, because the rain is eventually coming. So, and that's how I like to extend the season. So I don't like to try to plant so much more at the end of the planting season. I always try to front load the planting season so that the plants are in the ground when the rain starts. So just right before the rain starts. So I always hope it's going to start sooner rather than later. Sometimes it doesn't start till November, which is really tough. Sometimes we get stuff in October. So I generally start planting after Labor Day. But yeah, it's just sometimes it's easier after the first rain. Um, so that's my general strategy for planting trees and anything else.
Great, thanks. And then next question, how do we plan for irrigation system when we're creating lawn alternatives?
That's a very interesting thing. It really depends on what you're planting. Um, and Callscape actually has a really good um, sort of like how to, depending on what you plant. Because plant roots like to grow towards water, how can you mimic a natural uh, system in which plants will get the water that they need? And so that's one thing. But if you're planting things that you want to survive on rainfall, then you don't need an irrigation system. So the um, and a lot of like I mentioned before, a lot of our places don't have irrigation, and so we work with nature and plant during the rainy season. We use that mycorrhizal inoculant, and you want to get a mycorrhizal inoculant, the fungal inoculant that's basically kind of a local mix of things. And I'm just going to go off into a tangent about mycorrhiza here for a minute. But so mushrooms, okay, I'm talking fungus. The mushrooms that you see on the surface of the ground, those are mushrooms whose fibers, their little roots, their hyphae, wrap around the roots of plants, and they don't go to the inside of plants. Those are the ones that send the mushrooms up to the surface and then release their spores. Those spores, then you can put in with plants right onto the plant root ball themselves. Now, another type of mycorrhiza, the one that goes inside the root, they never send up a mushroom. So you want an inoculant that has a mix of both the kinds that wrap around and the kind that go inside. What happens with these mycorrhiza? these mushrooms, these fungus, is that they um, they will trade goodies back and forth with plants. So they'll give minerals and other things to the plant, and the plant gives the mycorrhizal uh, synergistic neighbor there, um, carbohydrates, so sugar. So everybody loves sugar. And that sugar is how we get carbon out of the atmosphere and into the ground, and it gets stored into the fungal stuff. But also, what the fungus does is that um, they make they make the soil kind of sticky because they can also store water. So it's all these ways to get around having to plan an irrigation system. In my own home garden, I will confess I actually broke my irrigation system. I tried installing drip. The squirrels would chew through every emitter that I had. And, that's a great way to establish plants is to put down the tubes. Um, you can put it on the surface, have an emitter there to water the plants while they establish, and then just once they are established and they can survive on rainfall, turn it off, um, maybe flip it on when you need to, um, or water by hand. Hand watering is what I do at home because I actually broke pipes when I was digging holes because when you bury pipes underground, you forget where they are. Squirrels chew through things. Then our controller broke. Um, so, I do design irrigation systems, but I prefer not to. I prefer to like plant things that don't need irrigation systems. So, but you can actually, depending on the things that need a drip, you can like look at like how many emitters that would take to get the number of gallons that they need. It's kind of lengthy, but what you want to do is plan your garden first and then try to, put things together that are like similar water uses so that something isn't going to get overwatered if it's next to something that needs a little bit more water. So, um, so planning for your irrigation system starts with the plants and how you place them in your garden. And then you can plan the irrigation system around them, whether that's you out there with the hose or rain from the clouds or how you ever you want to do it.
Thanks. And is there anything that can be done for preventing or deferring squirrels from feasting on flowering fruits trees, resulting in blighted growth?
Ah, the squirrels. I have battled squirrels in my own home garden. I have a couple of apple trees, and I've tried bagging the fruits with fancy Japanese fruit bags and then regular cheap fruit bags. I've tried putting netting over the trees. Um, I have tried everything, and then I just gave up. Um, so I don't know what else to try. I gave up on the squirrels from feasting on everything. I just figured, they're very good at figuring out how to untie bags and um, getting inside a net and, carrying things off. So, other than maybe putting up an owl box, perhaps, so or a raptor perch, and hope that maybe a hawk will swoop in and snag it as it's carting off your fruit. I don't know if there's really any way to stop them from doing those sorts of things. Gophers. So gophers, what's really effective to keep them from getting at the roots is to line your planting holes with wire baskets or very small gauge chicken wire so that they can't actually get through to the roots. So a physical barrier underground uh, can stop them from getting to the roots of your plants.
Sweet. Mm. I'll see any other questions. Also, feel free to raise your hand too if you want to ask your question live. Yeah, I will unmute you as well, or if you have any, if you prefer to type in Q&A, you can also do so. It was it was a really great presentation. Thank you, Juanita. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's the squirrel thing is the nature showing showing us
Yes.
uh, the garden showing us to do something else or just live with it. Just live with um the other species.
Yes, I wish I had an answer for that, but I have literally tried everything that I can think of, and I just purchase apples from somewhere else, and problem solved. And the squirrels are super happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I also I remember for like the pioneer species is it is good to like attract pollinators, and then so if I have an edible garden, I can plant those species. Do I would it be helpful if I plant those species in between the the edible veggies
Oh,
so to
yes,
to
absolutely.
prevent like yeah to prevent like insect eating up my plants, like how what kind of species do you recommend like planting between the edible gardens so it's not overtaking the whole place?
Oh, well, that's always a thing. So it depends on what your edible plants are. So like in my home garden, I have an artichoke plant that's smack in the middle of a native bed of like seaside daisy and a special kind of baccharis and some sneezeweed. So it's growing in with a bunch of other things. Um, and you know, I mean, it's not 100% that you're not going to have any bugs on your plants because bugs are really good at finding spaces to hide. And artichokes are one of those places where harvested one yesterday and was washing it, and about I would say a couple dozen earwigs crawled out of it. And they were just hiding in there. They weren't eating it at all, but that's where they like to hang out because, nothing can get to them in between the little petals of the artichoke. But it was annoying. I mean, I'm like watching this thing and they keep crawling out. I'm thinking, how many can be in here? But it's just like it's all good. It's like it's a sign that, your garden is coherent. You have a lot of life here. You have birds nesting. Clearly, there's things for them to eat. They're not missing any meals. So, but yeah, so other things that you can plant around, like, like say if you had onions growing, and you really like those, what you could plant around those, you could do some smaller annuals that would attract pollinators. Um, and maybe things that would attract parasitic wasps as well. But if you have something that needs pollination to form fruit, like strawberries, for example, um, you know, have a have your large patch of strawberries, and then because the way that pollination works is that bees will show what's called flower constancy. They'll they'll stick with one type of flower at a time. So they'll go from poppy to poppy to poppy, um, and not do any other flowers. So they end up with a lot of like just orange pollen on their legs where they have gathered it. And poppies might be a good plant to include around in a vegetable garden because poppies don't have nectar, they only have pollen. And poppies are also buzz pollinated, which means that bees have to shake the flower to shake out the pollen at a certain frequency. Honeybees don't do that, and honeybees are kind of aggressive. Um, and our native, like our bumblebees and our other bees that do the buzz pollination are not. I have never been stung by them. Um, and so things also that require buzz pollination would be tomatoes, right? So if you plant poppies next to your strawberries and your tomatoes, chances are you're going to get more tomatoes because they'll be, they're not going to be pollinated by honeybees because honeybees can't buzz pollinate. They can't shake the pollen, but bumblebees can. And so you're attracting the bumblebees with, the pollen is kind of like, it's kind of their bread and butter. So they really love the pollen, and then they will then move on after they're done with the poppies to your tomatoes. Buzz pollinate those, you get tons of tomatoes, and other insects will, encourage.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
yeah.
Because, yeah, because I'm planning to like have a edible garden, but that's really helpful for me to know that. And that's why last time when I'm in one of your pollinator gardens, when I look at the bumblebees, they always fly on one plant, like from the poppies to poppies, even though there are other plants between them, but they just just go to the same plant.
It's
That makes
interesting.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. It's like, why don't they sample? But actually, it's actually more efficient for them, especially if you have a mass of plants all in one place. That way they don't have to spend a lot of time commuting back and forth distances. They can get all their shopping done in one store essentially and head back to the nest because what they'll do is they'll take the pollen and the nectar that they have collected, make a little loaf, and that is what their offspring will eat. They lay an egg on top of that loaf, and that's what the baby bee eats. So bees are vegetarians.
Oh, that's that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is still wisdom from the nature, um, that's coming from our yeah, from our mother planet. We got one comment saying thank you for the best informative section, and your message is encouraging and pragmatic, pragmatic. So, yeah, thank you
Nice.
so much.
Well, thank you for that comment. Yes, I find a lot of joy, and I like to spread what I've learned from nature, which she showed me over the years. It's just like nature. She's chill. She's got the goods.
Yeah. Okay. If there's no any questions, I'm going to end this webinar. And if you like have any question like after this webinar, feel free to email um, Juanita or reach her out in her Primrose Way pollinatorgarden.com. And also if you have any topic that you're interested in the future, feel free to email me, like put in your topics that you want to hear in the future, and I will try to coordinate that as well. And I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you so much, Juanita, for tonight's presentations. Very informative and inspiring.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining tonight. Hope to see you next time in our next webinar. I'm going to end this. Have a good night, everyone. Have a good night, Juanita. Thank you.